Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Recording a little late.
So I am writing things down. I mean, I'm
Okay,
writing
so
script.
just to review.
Okay.
Okay, just because now we're recording and then Kelly can see this too.
Okay.
Um, um, the initial meeting that you have the video of, you guys come together. We don't know what that means. We just see this incredible celebration of people hugging and coming together and meeting for the first time, right? And then all these other people standing by, but also emotional and excited. Cut to you, first child, your birth. We have images from your baby pictures. You're describing um, that you were born blank date. Where were you born again? In Pasadena or something?
Downey.
Downey. So you were born in Los Angeles, this date, to this mother who for a couple months wasn't sure who what she was going to do with the child. So she kept the baby, right? For a little while?
No. No.
Oh, so
I
she
was immediately after she left the hospital, I was immediately put into foster care.
and
So
so if
either
you're
it was, I don't believe it was like a foster home per se. I think it was more like maybe a foster like group home.
but so as a mother, I mean, can you ask Milena this? Like, so she how did okay, so she is it like while you're deciding if you're going to keep the baby or not, you give the baby, she could have taken you back from this place if she wanted to keep you?
I think so, yeah. Because
Okay.
no paperwork had been signed. So that was sort of what the holdup was. Because if she left the hospital, I suppose, and made the decision during her time at the hospital and said, I'm going to place my child, then from that, probably that moment, I would have been adopted sooner than 3 months because babies were in great need at that time. I mean,
Yeah.
anytime, but um, so I believe the story goes, and I would have to refresh my memory with her, but I believe that she uh, was pondering for about 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay. It
It
was,
might have even been less than that. It might have been 2 to 4 weeks or something like that because she was with her uncle, and her uncle kept saying to her, her aunt and uncle, who she was staying with, they kept saying to her, you need to make a decision. This baby just can't be held in limbo for weeks on end while you're deciding. That's not
I mean,
fair to the
what you're
child.
saying,
And
all this story that you're telling right now is a really interesting story. I think for the very opening of your origin story and like this limbo and this doubt and like it kind of could have gone either way, you know what I mean? Your whole future is like dependent on the decision of this person, you know? So I think that's part of your, I don't know structurally if we've already met. Well, no, I would go chronologically. And then so I would leave it in doubt for a couple months. February, March, April, May, June, July, I guess not. So then I would say limbo, limbo, limbo for a while, find out how long that takes, and then intro Gail and Barbara, Glenn who picked you out, cut. Okay. That's a lot of story
okay.
already, just on you and your early coming into the world, the first couple months of being existing in the world. Then we meet um, uh, Kelly.
Kelly.
Okay, Kelly's born to blah 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 and blah blah blah. Right. Um, where she's born, who her parents are, who she believes her parents are. Right.
Hmm.
And then I would tell that beginning. Did she have other siblings, et cetera, et cetera? You know. I don't think we get into like psych. Those aren't your parents yet. You know.
No, no, definitely
I think
not.
that's a little
Because
too
that's,
early because we need to kind
well,
of,
right, yeah. Because I think that the story, again, very briefly, but I think the story of her childhood, and she does say it in our interview. We had really long, in-depth conversations. It wasn't just clearly like ask a question, answer the question, ask it. We had like back and forth, in-depth conversations. But I think the thing about her story is that, she's going along, growing up, she lived on a farm with her parents and brother, and they had horses, and like very idyllic, if you will. But
yeah.
then she got into how her brother was treated very different to her, how she felt different, not that she knew why she felt different, but she didn't look like anybody. She didn't, there was some stark contrast of like, I don't look like any of these people. But why would she think anything other than, well, she just, got these genes and that's it, and she didn't know, right? So you don't go your whole life like, oh, maybe I'm adopted. Like maybe some kids do just for fun, but what
Well,
I'm saying
everybody wonders and asks their
is
parents, and then they always say no. You know what I mean?
right.
Did she ever ask her parents?
No, because it wasn't in her mind, well, maybe I'm adopted.
But
It
she
was
felt something.
it was just a simple thought, a visual almost of just like, well, I don't look like these people, but oh well, just kind of blow it off, right?
But you said there were some signs. She felt different too.
She not felt different. She just felt like she didn't look like anybody. So it was a visual thing, maybe not a feeling necessarily.
Okay.
That
But it,
makes
but
that
the, but there was but it planted something in her mind.
Yeah, but I mean, as quickly as you think about it, you kind of put it out as well. Like,
Right, and go, oh yeah, there's twins who don't even look alike. It's so
right.
whatever.
The thought of adoption, of being adopted, really never entered her mind. It was just more of a casual, like, I don't really look like that cousin or this mom or that dad or whatever. Um, but then, she talks a lot about, which again, we don't need to put this into the scenario, but she talks about the difference in the way they were both treated and by the parents. And
Hmm.
she talks a lot about how, well, not a lot. She mentions that she was abused by her parents, by her dad, like uh not sexual abuse, but like physical abuse, just like kids getting in trouble, the dad would hit with the belt or, you know, punch her, but he would
Would he
also,
also do it to the son or
yeah,
no?
yes, he would also do it to
Okay,
the,
so the dad was just abusive.
yeah,
Okay,
dad was just authoritarian and you
I
know
get it. Yeah.
a strict you didn't do your chores right, or whatever.
Hmm.
um and then she talks about like finding the strength one day when she was, I don't know, 14, or I forget the exact age, but she talks about how at one point, 13, 14 years old, she turns around and she says to her dad, you're not going to hit me anymore, I'm done with this. And he never hit her again. So the
Wow.
minute she stood up to him, he backed down and never hit her again. And I guess I asked if the abuse stopped with her brother as well, and she didn't seem to know, or she assumed, I guess, that it did. But anyway, it was just an interesting story. So this like is kind of like her childhood, growing up like in this idyllic situation where her friends were always saying, you're so lucky you live on a farm with horses and this and that. And her in her mind, lucky, yes, but on the flip side, I'm being abused and beaten, and
Well,
so
and also deceived massively,
right, but not knowing it
or
then.
not knowing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so you're gonna be kind of talking about your childhood's parallel. It would be nice if you could find certain times where, like, let's say you're talking about, this is like the bad idea, but you're like age 8, and then you have like a photo of you and her side by side next to each other, and then it's like age 13, side by side, and you're like, they kind of look alike. You know what I mean? Like, what's
Right,
going on?
right.
After she's already said, I didn't look like anybody or my cousins or whatever, and then you see these two photos side by side, you know, old school photos from the 70s of two little blonde kids who look similar.
Yeah.
Um, Now, in your story, when did you know that you were adopted? How were you told you were adopted?
I mean, whatever age do you start remembering things? Age 4, 3, 4, 5?
So it wasn't like you remember, like they sat you down and said,
I
Brenda,
was
it was just like, it's just like you knew it from birth. You just always knew it.
I just always knew it. Probably my first, I don't have a clear memory of this a moment, but I remember my brother making jokes with me about our adoptions. Like, you were adopted. I mean, maybe he would say we were adopted, but mom paid, 5 cents for you, but paid, $2 for me. Ha ha ha. Like that was so it
Was
was
it mean or was it fun?
um I mean, I didn't take it. I didn't. It didn't upset me.
Okay.
It
No,
it
but
just.
was he trying to put you down and make himself look better? Or was it just a total joke because there was something he was trying to work through? Or
um,
was he just a kid and he just
I
said,
think he was just a kid, and he was just sort of making light of the fact that we were adopted, and like, he had more value in the game because they paid more for him.
no, yeah,
That's
okay.
the joke. Yeah, it was purely just like, haha, I'm superior because they paid more for me.
Hmm.
When actuality, I mean, paid. It's not like we were paid. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? They didn't like write a check for us.
No,
I
they
mean,
paid cash.
yeah. I mean, so it was just a funny way of him establishing his age, his superiority, his whatever,
Yeah, that's his job. He's the
but in
older
a
brother.
but in a joking way, in a very
Okay.
sort of loving, joking way. So
Okay, so you always knew you were adopted. It was just like the sky's blue, you're adopted. You just this is the world that you live in. So,
but
um,
I do have to say that in looking back, like I, I think that the way it was talked about in our family, it was talked about in a very sort of positive, loving, special way. Like we were special.
mhm.
That's how we were, that's how the topic of adoption was talked about or felt. That's how I felt in our family. It wasn't like, oh, oh, you were just adopted, or you were
No
just
one wanted you.
runaway kid. Yeah. It was always portrayed as a very positive and special thing.
And what age did you inquire about your birth parents?
So um I just want to make a quick note. Hold on.
Okay.
um
Actually, before that, so what was your feeling? You said what they made you feel, which was you're special, don't feel any kind of inferiority about being adopted. That's how they um,
Presented it. Yeah.
presented it and wanted you to feel because they
Right.
wanted to protect you from feeling any other way other than fully, a fully loved human. But how did you feel?
I felt I felt as they I would imagine that they hoped I would. Like I felt very special. I never felt any source of abandonment or somebody didn't want me. And
Yeah,
whether that was that they sort of ingrained that in me, or that's just maybe part of my personality, is
yeah,
that I don't, I never felt given up or unwanted or abandoned.
yeah. Well, you're an Aquarius, so you know what I
Everything's
mean.
just
You know
light,
you're
river,
special.
water.
Yeah.
Um, but what I wanted to go back and just say, like, so we're gonna start doing sort of side by side at sort of, I think, like sort of crucial sort of not life-changing times, but like obviously infant, maybe like 7, 8 years old. And then
Yeah.
from there, maybe like teenage, like 14, 15, 16, when we really start taking on our own personality, whether it's through our haircuts or our fashion, or, then you see a real like kind of uh like a skip, like from you're just a cute kid at 8, and then at 14 your personality really starts coming out. uh
Yeah.
you know
But thematically, though, it would be nice not just on the ages, but the theme stuff where it's like how you feel in your family. You feel
Mhm.
a certain way in your family. She feels a certain way in her family too, which is I don't know how she feels about those people who her dad who is abusive or her mom who don't know. You know what I mean? Like I think
Right.
how she feels about her parents versus how your adoption is presented. Because her it's like how do you feel in your home and in the world? Like you when you're a child, like your home is the world. Your parents are the world. Like this is
Right.
like, you know.
Well, what I think I might have asked her in our interview, and if we didn't, I'll make a note of asking her the question again. But I wanted to find out, like, if you're being abused, because again, I don't know how that is, but like, what was your physical life with your parents like? Were they loving? Were they affectionate? Because I said that in my interview with my parents, like, even though my dad had physical limitations, he still loved, you know, giving me hugs and kisses, and
Mhm.
my mom too. Like, my family was very affectionate with us, and always made sure to hug us and kiss us and say I love you and say goodnight prayers and whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wanted to find out from her, like,
Exactly.
yeah, like, what was your physical uh connection with
Relationship to your parents and also what you just said is important. You knew you were loved. You heard them say I love you. There was physical affection, you know, knowing that in this like home there's love there. You go into the world, whatever anybody says to you, some mean person comes in, da da da, you know you're loved.
right,
So what's her relationship to her parents' love toward her, you know?
right,
I mean, okay, that's what I meant by the thematic thing and not just
right,
the age thing.
right.
So then in early adolescence, there's how you then also related to yourself and your body and the world in early, because you also share so much genetically, you know?
Hmm.
Um, but
I think in our sorry to interrupt you, but I think in our teenage years is where, separately, not knowing, obviously, our lives start becoming kind of paralleled.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. And I think that that's when it really kind of started. Like, if you see pictures of us at 14, 15, 16, when we were all, Madonna crazy and whatever, she and I were very much, we looked a lot alike. And that's what I was trying to say. Like, when our personalities start coming out in our
okay,
style and our look and our haircuts and our hairstyles.
do
And
you
so that,
have those pictures? Do you have like fluorescent fucking bracelets and like Madonna looking outfits and
I
stuff?
mean,
Sort of.
sort of, yeah. I
Are
mean,
there any like wild like synchronicities or coincidences that
well, I think there's, I mean, obviously, like, our senior photos
Mhm.
are just like, what? Who, like, just you put them side by side, it's trippy. And I think there we've shared some other photos with each other before like during high school, before high school, like those
Okay.
that time frame, and that's when we can kind of also talk about, what's going on in our lives at that time, because I know for her, she moved out at the age of 15 and moved in with her aunt, so she goes into a whole description of what that was
Why
like.
did she move in with her aunt? How come?
She just wasn't getting along with her mom and her parents, and maybe all this abuse stuff. She was just finally like, I've had enough of it.
I think that's important because that's also a place in which you guys are
We differ.
really differ,
Yeah, yeah. So,
Okay, and then at what is it that you're not allowed to even seek your adoption? Did you ask your, Gail and Barbara or Gail and well, I
yeah.
guess it'd be Gail
So
and Barbara, not Gail and
yeah, Gail. Yeah. Well, I asked my parents. I mean, Dorothy was not,
not Dorothy.
somebody I would go to ask those kinds of questions to. But
Yeah.
at the age of like 15, 16, I was working, I was babysitting for this lady who lived up on 23rd or something north of Wilshire. And somebody through the church, and I would babysit for her, and she worked in adoptions. I don't remember if she worked in an attorney's office or an adoption agency or whatever. Anyway, so I told her, I'm adopted, and I would really love to look for my birth parents. And but I don't know where to start. I don't know where do I start, So she kind of gave me some tips, like you call the Bureau of Adoptions or find out what kind of adoption you had. Was it open? Was it closed? Where was your adoption done? Was it through the county? Was it through, a church or charity or something? So I then went back to my dad and told him, I said, I want to start looking for my birth parents. I'm curious. I want to know where I get my color, my hair color, my eye
Yeah.
color. And he says, well, you have that letter, don't you? And I said, what letter? And it was a letter from the adoption agency. After the adoption was final, the agency, the Los Angeles County, would send a letter, basically like kind of like a welcome letter, and like, if your child ever asks, here's the information we have at the time of birth. And it's like a descriptive letter. It's, first says like, congratulations to the new parents, blah, blah, blah. And it says, here's some following information that your child might ask about or want to know.
Do you have that letter?
Somewhere, yeah.
You gotta show that letter. That's amazing.
Yeah. And
Or,
Kelly, I think, also
or
has,
we invent one or fake it.
yeah, we might invent one. Kelly also has a similar letter that she was obviously only given later, but
Amazing.
so it just goes, it says, maternal mother, brown hair, brown eyes, 5'6", kind of a physical description. Then it says about the maternal grandparents, German, Serbian, or actually I think it said Yugoslavian. They had it wrong, but whatever. So and then it said whatever paternal information was given by Milena, right? Because he wasn't really around.
Yeah.
So and he was adopted. So whatever paternal information was in the letter, it was from his adopted parent, like whatever Milena knew through him. She didn't know his birth background, so she just used his background that she knew of through his adopted parents. Anyway, it's fine. It doesn't matter. But and then it said paternal father or birth father, blonde hair, green eyes, 6'1", and I'm like, well, I must look like him then, because I don't look like her. I don't have brown eyes, brown hair. So in my mind, it sort of satisfied me for some period of time. If that was at the age of 16, it sort of satisfied me. And then when I was, I think 21 or 22, I sort of revisited the question, right? Of how do I
Yeah.
go about? So I just started flipping through the phone book, and I just went to like Los Angeles County adoptions, and I just started like sort of fishing from there. And I just called the number that was in the phone book, and I remember making notes of it in the phone book
Mhm.
in the yellow pages,
Yeah.
and I called and left a message. Nobody had picked up, so I said, hi, my name's Brenda Williams. Was born on this date. I was given up for adoption. Just trying to inquire about that or whatever I said. And nobody ever called me back. So I just closed up the yellow pages, and I kind of carried on for another year or two or three. And then when I was 23, I went back to the yellow pages. I opened it, and there were my notes. And it wasn't like that many notes. It was just like, oh, I called, left a message, whatever.
Hmm.
So I called the number again, spoke to somebody, and she basically just took my information and she said, we'll assign a social worker to your claim, to your request. And it takes about 15 to 18 months to assign, just to get a social worker on your case. And I was like, all right. I mean, what can I do? Right.
Why, I mean, you've waited this long anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's another 2 years? I mean, I wasn't going to go like
But
hire a
that's
private.
okay. But this is all part of the investigation, you know?
Yeah. And then a week later, my phone rings and it's a social worker calling me because somebody in the office had, made the connection of matching the birth mother with my birthday information. And because Milena had called in a week before I had to update some stuff in her file that she had started years ago.
Because she was like, in case they ever come out, because she doesn't know where you are or
Correct.
what your name is even.
Correct.
And
Correct.
so
So
she was doing that in the hopes that you might one day try and contact her.
exactly. So basically she starts like her own file and she could put music, letters, poems, pictures, whatever is in there so that if and when I ever called in, I could be shown that folder and I could basically look in the folder and just walk away, or I could then go to the next step and authorize my information to be given to her. That
Okay.
then the connection is made. But I did have the option to just walk away, look and see what's in there, because by opening a file, which she did, she basically released her information.
Yeah, saying
Right.
contact me if at your
Right.
if you want
She's
to.
releasing her privacy rights.
Okay.
And so sorry, my text messages are going crazy.
I didn't even hear it.
Okay, good. So that's from that phone call on, my life was never going to be as it was the day
Yeah.
before the phone call. So that's when my story started to expand and go into this whole life-changing phone call.
And you
So
didn't have to wait 2 years.
I didn't have to wait 2 years, 1 week.
So, and then parallel to that, at what age did her parents tell her that she was adopted and under what circumstances?
So she, from the age of 15 to 17, had lived with her aunt.
Hmm.
And at the age of 17, I guess she had gone back home, and maybe her parents were upset with her for having left. And they basically, I don't really recall if she was coming home to try to come back to live at home or if she was trying to come home to reconcile things. But that's when she was basically no words were said, but she was thrown paperwork like a birth certificate that had a name she didn't recognize, which was her birth given name. Or it was documents saying that this child's name has been changed from this to that. So
Okay.
this name changed to Kelly Ann, you know. And so she's looking at this documentation that says this baby A, whatever that was this, is now this. And so now she makes the connection.
They
Oh,
did it wordlessly
yeah,
at age 17.
age 17. So she tries to then go back to her parents and says, what is this? And her mom says, it's exactly what it says. And that's all they say.
So they basically were waiting until she was 18 to tell her.
Or
Or,
maybe they were never going to tell her. I mean,
although why at that age, at that time, did they suddenly like throw this paperwork at her?
maybe they felt it was going to come out because her whole family knew. And she had like 36 first cousins between her mom and dad's side of the family. And they were all around the same age and they all knew. So maybe her parents started to get worried, or maybe her parents started to get worried that she would start sort of snooping around
She was at that age, yeah.
right, and find out,
And does she talk about this in your interview?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
in pretty good depth. So
Okay, so you're basically from this point of the story, I would say, like you're kind of like bouncing back and forth between your parallel lives that are not intersected. And we're starting to put together, wait a second, do we think that those two people at the beginning of the movie are related? Because at some point it's got to come out now,
yeah,
soon, who
yeah.
the birth father is for you, right?
For me, yes. Well, yeah,
First. First
we were
it's going to come out for you, right?
first it's going to come out for me because I asked her after you found out you were adopted, when you get these papers thrown at you, what was your next step? Like, did
Mhm.
you immediately start looking for information? And so then she answers the question uh,
Yeah.
that yes, she starts looking for information. Um, and she talks about sort of the steps she took and the results that came from it. Because she was adopted through the Catholic Charities, any information that you were requesting, they basically had to be the mediator. So you had to put your request in with them. They had to then go to the birth parent, birth mother, and ask, and let them know that there's been some communication, and basically forward her request onto the birth mother.
Okay.
And so I think early on, I think like right after that, the agency, Catholic Charities, came back to her and said she wants no communication with you.
Mm.
So she's kind of left, and that's the only way she can have communication is through the Catholic Charities. So there's no corresponding communication.
Okay, so that would be interesting to have your story in which Milena gives over the right, the openness, the file, creates the file
Right,
to you and then cut to next piece of the puzzle. Her mom does the exact opposite,
right,
which
right.
just seems like, oh shit, the whole investigation for you is completely wide open. For her, the door's shut, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, I can't believe what a double whammy to find that out from your parents. And then when you start to seek, the birth mother says
Says no.
no. Wow. Hey Larry, what's happening?
Ah,
How are you? Come on in. Come on in.
This is not my department.
No, no, come on in. Just say hello.
just
It's
say
just
hello.
us. It's just the two of us.
We've been abandoned.
Yeah,
And,
it's just,
and
we're the only ones here. How are you?
where's Kelly?
Sick as a dog. Hey,
Are you Jonathan? Let me just go and kill the dog. We could do a documentary about
Yeah, yeah. Do it off camera so we don't get any evidence.
that.
we don't need PETA jumping down our throat. We don't need a PETA visit.
Another one. Yeah.
Another one. um,
Yeah. Okay. So this is like great. All this stuff. If you're, hopefully you're getting this all down. I can also help you get it down once.
yeah,
But so then you guys are basically around between 17, 18, and 21 here, right?
yeah,
And then now for you, it just becomes like meeting Milena, right? You meet Milena soon after that.
at the age of 23. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's interesting. Kelly was looking up emails and stuff that like some correspondence or something. I don't know if it was emails, but letters, actual snail mail at that time of her correspondence with the Catholic Charities during some point during that time. And
Mhm.
she thinks that around the time that I communicated with Milena for the first time, she thinks around that very same time that she communicated with her birth father, who was listed on the birth certificate, who was actually not her birth father.
Why was he on the birth certificate? I don't understand that.
So the birth mother, obviously, when she had
Oh,
Kelly,
that's right. She didn't know who the father was.
right, and she was dating this guy at the time, pregnant. Like maybe she was just pregnant and started dating this guy, and she kind of she had told this guy that she thought it was might have been this guy that was this musician who was traveling through, but so then and then they broke up at some point during her pregnancy, I guess. So then she has the baby, she lists this guy as the birth father. So
Okay.
when Kelly gets this birth certificate, right, that has so sorry, it doesn't list the parents' names, but between her communications through the Catholic Charities, she finds out somehow, because she says, I just want to know XYZ. I want to know my background. I want to know any health information, blah, blah. So the Catholic Charities goes to her birth mother and says, request this information. Basically, they're the mediator. So the birth mother responds back and responds back with whatever. But somehow on the birth certificate was not there was some point in which she must have found out the name. I don't believe it was listed on the birth certificate because that was not legal.
But she's going to tell this part of the story anyway, right?
Yeah, she tells it all in her interview.
Okay, great.
Yeah. But anyway, so around that same time is when she contacts the birth father, who she thinks is the birth father, and he says, "Oh wow, I mean, I didn't think I was the father, but if she's listed me as the father, I guess I'm the birth father." Like he didn't know, he questioned it, but he just kind of went along with.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, I was dating her. Okay, I mean.
Yeah, and she wasn't. I mean, she was just pregnant, so maybe he could have been like. I mean,
And they broke up too before the baby was born.
right? So he wouldn't have had a choice whether he was listed as the father or not, But around that same time, if I'm 23 and I meet Milena, around that same time, she believes that her first communication with her birth father, for which they carried on a relationship for 10 years.
Oh, thinking that he was her father.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Thought he was her birth father, and they kind of had similar looks. And so she was like, okay,
Oh my God. Have you seen the movie Flirting with Disaster?
No.
Okay.
Maybe. Have I? I don't know. I have a really bad memory.
You should go see this movie. It's a comedy about exactly this, about trying to
Okay.
find
I
it.
think I have seen it. I think I
Ben
have.
Stiller's in it and a bunch of, anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so they carry on a relationship for 10 years. She thinks I found my birth father. Um, God, what a
Yeah, and then because there was no DNA home kits available, or like paternity tests available to random, to public. So then it becomes available. So she says to him, "We should do a paternity test just for like jokes, like ha ha ha, Why that? I mean, that's just bizarre to me. Like, if you really think this is your birth father, why would you even question it? There must have been some external force that was making her question it, or even if it was just a joke, like we should just do it like just for funsies,
Mhm.
And they did it, and it comes back he's not the father. So then she's thrown again.
And how old is she then?
A
Between
bit.
23 and 33, you said?
Yeah. So
And
like around age, I think she said she was around 36, maybe 36. I think she said that the other, I don't remember exactly the age, but she was around 36 when they realized, or 33 or whatever, when they realized that he was not the birth father.
Do they live in the same, like nearby each other? Or?
I think so. No. Actually, no, he lived in Maine,
Okay.
New Jersey.
Okay.
So, so then, this sort of voided period of time goes by, and then ancestry.com comes available. So then she would have been probably 40, I think 44 or 45. So I think she said it was like basically 10 years from like the age of 33 to 43. And then when she was 43 is when Ancestry came up, and I don't think she did it right away, but I think she did it. And she submitted her profile and then just never really checked it, and nothing ever really came of it. And then one day somebody said, "Oh, have you checked your profile?" or something. I don't remember exactly how it all went down. She describes it though. She tells the story.
Can we go back for a little bit?
Yeah.
When did you locate Jonathan, though?
When I met Milena for the first meeting,
Mhm.
she then had already been in contact with Jonathan and let him know I was coming over for our first meeting, because she lived in Reseda, you know?
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought Milena lived in Ohio.
No, that's where she was born, but she had come out to California to have me,
In Downey.
Downey, and maybe gone back to Ohio just briefly after I was born and then came back. She
And has
didn't
always lived in Reseda?
until 1996,
And then where?
Ohio.
Right. That's why I thought Ohio, because I knew
Yeah,
when we were doing the film, she
right,
came in from Ohio
right.
around that time, because I think we interviewed her, didn't we?
Hmm.
Didn't we interview her, but we never used it or something?
Yeah, we never used it.
Yeah. Um, so you met Jonathan or knew of Jonathan's existence pretty soon after you met Milena or contacted her.
When I met Milena that night, I got on the phone with him and talked to him for the first time.
Can this be part of this is important to introduce Jonathan here in the film
Yeah,
as you
yeah,
knew him, because now, like, there's still this huge piece of time where you meet your birth father, she thinks she's met her birth father, you're having a relationship with your actual birth father, she has another, like, false start or whatever kind
right,
of thing,
right,
you know,
right,
and then has to go back to the drawing board while you keep developing this relationship. So
right.
then once she's found out that, and you have somewhat of a relationship with your birth father?
Me
Yeah, from
now?
this time on.
From this time on, yes.
And then
The
you
whole,
went, when did you first meet him in person?
I think I met him maybe 2 months later. It was
Oh,
quick. It was quick.
fast. Where?
In Virginia.
Do you have pictures of any of this stuff?
Um,
Gotta have pictures.
I know, I know.
Because all this stuff, the documentary evidence of this stuff would be amazing.
No. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I do.
I
Yeah,
mean, okay, here's the thing what you need to do first before anything. Cut together, however rough it can be, the chronology of each of your individual stories
okay,
in just whatever form that can be.
yeah.
Zoom with audio, just audio, whatever, you know.
And
Then we got what?
an additional to what we've already done, in addition to what we've
Yeah,
already
you
done.
need to take what you've done from these
Yeah,
interviews
yeah.
and cut two parallel stories that are
Okay,
happening. Your story, her story.
okay,
And then you need to then blend them after, you know,
okay.
the bounce back and forth, you know. But first, in a way, you need your full story told from beginning, from birth until you meet her, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then,
Sorry, when I'm looking down, I'm just writing notes. I'm not,
no, good.
I'm not.
So then you've met Jonathan um, in your early 20s. Time passes. How does it come up that okay, so she has ancestry.com in her 40s?
Yeah.
You have no idea there's her or the other sister that exists?
Um, during when?
When do you know that she exists and the other third sister?
I knew about the third sister. Yes, baby, you might need to take some dog food out of the freezer. I find out about the third sister, Grace. I find out about her immediately.
How?
Milena told me, or Jonathan.
Is
I mean,
she younger than you or older?
yes, she's 6 years younger.
And she's whose child? Jonathan
Jonathan,
and some other person.
his wife, his first
Oh,
wife.
so he raised that. So
Yeah,
Milena would have said there was this other, you have a half sister who was raised by Jonathan.
right,
One half sister.
correct.
Any half brothers raised by Jonathan? So he and this wife raised one child together.
Well, so his wife had a son previously before Jonathan.
Of course she did, to make this more complicated.
Well, she was married to this other guy, had a son, and then Jonathan and her get together. And he says, well, there's different stories, but basically she falls head over heels for Jonathan, but Jonathan doesn't want to be part of raising this other this other child. But then they get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
They're living on a farm up in Nova Scotia.
Okay.
And she has the baby at home, and it's so idyllic, and and meanwhile this son, who is the same age as me, so he was like 6 at the time, he's living with his dad because Jonathan doesn't
Oh yeah.
come around or whatever. And so then it's Jonathan, his new daughter, and his wife, and they're going on and on, but they're living in Nova Scotia, and he basically took a break from performing to
Mm-hmm.
go live on this farm in Nova Scotia,
Okay.
but realizes that he misses performing and misses being in sort of limelight, and he's not getting a bunch of gigs being isolated in Nova Scotia. So he leaves her at the farm with the baby and goes back into the city, and kind of gets reconnected and living off his one hit wonder.
Did he
And
have a hit?
yeah,
What's his hit?
Sunshine.
How's it go?
Sunshine, go away today. Don't feel much like dancing. Some man's come, he's trying to run my life. I don't know what he's asking. How much does it cost? I'll buy it. The time is all we've lost. I'll try it. He can't even run his own life. I'll be damned if he'll run my sunshine.
That has he made enough money to sort of like live his whole life off of that song?
Well, he didn't make royalties off that song, because you know how the music industry was in the 60s and 70s. It's like the managers stole all the money, and
Did he write the music though?
Yeah.
The melody?
so he never had the rights to the music,
Oh, okay.
apparently. The story gets really like on a whole nother tangent on that part, but
Okay.
his manager at the time was named Peter. And fast forward many, many years later, Peter and Jonathan's ex-wife end up getting married. It's like they were slapping each other in the face, like just with one failed like situation after another. It was so. Hence, when Jonathan came back to the city or whatever, he and his wife and the baby, he and his wife got divorced. So, or he had an affair and she left him, or God knows what the actual story is. But
Does he have any other kids besides these 3 daughters?
no, not that we know of. Well, he did have stepkids, but
No. But so this third child was born to this woman 6 years after you.
Right.
Right.
And they get divorced when she's like 4, and the mom takes the baby and like runs all over Europe and India and Africa. And so then Jonathan's story is that, she took her away from him, and he tried to find her and blah blah blah. And
Well, so basically he has 3 children but he's alone.
yeah, he has 3 children that were all not raised by him for various different reasons.
But so he lived most of his adult life alone without his children.
Yeah.
Knowing them or having a relationship with them.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like a Russian novel. We need like a family tree thing. What does Kelly find out from Ancestry.com?
Well, nothing initially. So she might have had a profile for a couple years, maybe more than that.
Okay.
And then I forget it. She does describe it in her answer, but somebody tells her, "Oh, have you checked your profile lately?"
Yeah,
Or,
that's what you were saying.
or you have a message or something.
Okay.
So she goes into her ancestry file, and there's like a message, and it says, whatever it says, like, it, close relative has sent you a message. So she's like, huh, close relative. So she opens it, and it's our paternal uncle, half uncle, that had messaged her on Ancestry.
Jonathan's brother.
Jonathan's half brother.
Okay.
And they show a very close match, almost like a paternal match.
And why was he on there?
Because he had also done his Ancestry profile.
Okay. Oh, so he thought maybe they were related.
Well, so when you put your profile in, like, you start getting messages of relatives.
Okay.
And then you can click on the relative to see how closely related you are. Whether,
and so it says you're like once removed from parent, meaning uncle.
right. It'll have a breakdown of a maternal or paternal DNA.
That's so insane.
So it'll say like first cousin maternal side or second cousin paternal side,
Okay, so this is
only if both parents have submitted their DNA.
right, but Jonathan.
Like on mine, I don't think it says paternal because he hasn't done it. But like, if mine will say maternal, and then if it doesn't say maternal, then it's paternal.
Was he happy to meet you when you first met?
Very, very happy. Yeah.
Did she meet his brother?
Did she meet?
But he's not the brother by blood of
Who?
Jonathan.
Yeah.
Oh, he is. So both of them were adopted.
No.
So Jonathan was sent for adoption, but his brother was not.
His brother was born after he was given up.
By the same 2 parents.
No. Jonathan's mother had 3 daughters from her husband. Then her husband was like, I don't know, had this job where he was gone for months at a time. Then she had an affair while her husband was gone with a man that she'd known for many years, who she really, really liked, and got pregnant. Then the husband comes back and she's pregnant, and he says, well, it can't be mine because I've been gone.
Right, and we can't have this, the neighbors.
Well, so then he says, well, just keep it quiet, and nobody needs to know, and we'll just, but he could never get over the fact that this was not his child. So she had Jonathan with her for 9 months. So the older sisters remember having a baby brother, having,
Right, I remember you telling me that.
then she places him for adoption. Then after that, she leaves the abusive husband, takes her 3 daughters, leaves the husband, goes and works on a farm, puts an ad in the paper for like, house cleaning or something. And these 2 brothers that have a farm have her come with her daughters and live on the farm with them. And she ends up falling in love with one of the brothers and then gets married and has this next son.
Meanwhile, Jonathan is already
Adoption, yeah.
adoption. And did she stay with that guy?
Yes, for 50 plus years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So the brother puts his profile in.
thank God for the brother.
Yeah, and the brother knew about Jonathan. Like
No, but
this
from
was a
Kelly's
family.
perspective, if this brother had never done this,
Yeah.
how would she have ever found Jonathan?
Well, I
How would
suppose.
she have ever found you?
Well, I suppose that other, just because the uncle. I mean, you can have second, third, fourth, fifth cousins that have all had profiles. I get emails all the time, like, you have a new relative. You go in and it's like, fourth cousin once removed or something. So you get notifications of other family members.
Right, okay,
And then
but
you
still,
then
but
you can
someone
kind of
so
track.
direct to the father
Correct.
is like, okay, so then does she meet this brother?
So he contacts her
Okay,
and says, I know that we have a very close DNA connection. However, I am not your father,
mm-hmm.
but I believe that my half brother might be your father.
Wow.
And I don't remember how he makes that connection or how he thinks, like, I mean, maybe because he's the only other one in that line, that DNA line. He doesn't have any other brothers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So the only one in that DNA, by process of elimination, if I'm not the father, but we're on the same line, then it's got to be a brother, and I only have one brother in his,
yeah.
and he's like a a professor at Stanford University, not Stanford. Yeah, maybe Stanford, wherever. So he was like, he was all into these numbers and the DNA profile, and like, he was like all into that. So he then spoke to Jonathan, but of course Jonathan doesn't even remember having this affair with this woman. But through, again, process of elimination, that's the only 2 possible
So it's
candidates.
maybe a one night stand or a couple, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, and then
Meanwhile, Milena was living with Jonathan apparently in Boston at the time.
how's that possible?
Pregnant with me. She's living with Jonathan, and he goes out.
Oh, right. So yeah, I'm like, how's
He
that
goes
possible?
out, yeah. So
Oh
he
yeah,
goes
if you're
out with the band. He goes
yeah,
out for some gigs with the band wherever, to Maine or wherever they were. And
God, adultery was just so much more acceptable back then.
it's so judged now.
I know, it's like
So taboo.
so taboo. It's not classy like it used to be. Um,
So then they communicate through Ancestry or whatever, through emails, and Kelly's just a little overwhelmed. She's like, oh my gosh. So then she says, so then he says, I'll get in touch with my brother and I will connect you two.
mhm.
They connect, and Jonathan says to Kelly, where are you? And she says whatever she says, because he says, well, okay. She says, I'm in New Jersey, and he says, okay, we'll be there in 6 hours. That was their first conversation, and she was like, whoa, this is all happening, like, even though she wanted it to happen, but it was like, you can only take in so much information.
Well, and also for 27 years, she's been striking out, and all of a sudden now it's happening,
Exactly. And she talks about that in our interview. She talks about how, like, she'd been so disappointed time and time again that,
Right.
like, couldn't handle another, so she actually said, if you wouldn't mind taking a paternity test before we get all, involved.
Yeah.
And that delayed their meeting by a couple of weeks because it took a couple of weeks to get the results and stuff. And she didn't want to, have a whole big meeting and a whole
That was
gathering.
smart of her to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. But then how did you two come to find out each other existed?
Well, I suppose that once the paternity test came back positive that he was the father by 99.99999% chance, he then contacted all of us. He contacted me, he contacted our other sister.
Oh, right. Okay. How great that he's so willing to do all this, right? I mean, or is
Well,
that his responsibility?
it's a good question. Suppose I guess who it depends who you ask. How
Well, I
commendable.
mean, you know him, what kind of guy he is, if he's like reluctantly doing this, or if he's really like wants to offer
I think
for all this fucking mishigas.
yes, I did. I think it's multifaceted. For one, being an adopted child, being an adoptee, he would never close the door on anybody, regardless of the circumstances, how it came to be. Do you get what I'm saying? So he didn't have, like, he felt abandoned and he felt given up and he felt he felt like a big hole in his heart. He said he always felt that he had siblings and that he had family out there.
Did he not never find his birth parents?
No, he did.
Oh, he did.
Yeah. That's the birth mother we went to go see in Minnesota.
Oh, that's right.
Right. So that's why he's so, sort of open to, okay, well, if I'm your father, then welcome in, like, come on in, regardless of the circumstances. And maybe there's some portion of amends or something like that, if you will. But again, I think it's multifaceted, but in his world, and I feel the same way, like, why would you say no? Like, this is your offspring.
Yeah.
Regardless. And so
No, but because what I'm really getting to is the mother never did that for Kelly.
right. And if you remember, I don't know if you remember, but the mother in her early communications via the Catholic Charities, in her communication basically to Kelly was, if abortion had been legal, we wouldn't even be having this correspondence.
I don't understand how that was communicated.
It's through a letter sent to the Catholic Charities, then forwarded on to Kelly. They were like the mediator, so all communication sort of went via them.
And she said that. She said, "This is what I want in my file to say."
It wasn't really a file. It was just basically like, I'm sending a letter responding to the request from the Catholic Charities. Here's my response.
Did Kelly ever find this woman in any kind of way though? Like look her up on Facebook to see who she is? Oh, so she found who she is.
Yeah. So the birth mother at some point had given her an email to communicate through.
Okay.
So somehow Catholic Charities was out of the middle now.
Okay.
I guess she said to the Catholic Charities, I will communicate directly with her now. And so she gave her an email, and she said, this email is just going to be used for this one-time purpose, and then I'm shutting down the email, and I'm having no more communication with you.
Okay.
So she had that information. She had the name.
So she's looked her up. She's seen her pictures.
She stalked her. Yeah, she stalked her on Facebook. Not stalked her, like communicated with her, but just like stalked Facebook looking for her. And in the process found her half sisters.
God, that's so fucking.
And has communicated with her half sisters, sort of.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so all this is to say because it's so much and because it's so complicated, I think it needs to start off as a podcast. No, I think it needs to be like an audio, like you just need to get the audio in the place piece by piece, rough, but the whole thing
Okay.
of both of your stories,
Okay.
and cut that so that then we can start to get the images that need to go with that audio.
Well, this was one of our questions was if we take the Zoom recording and put it into Adobe, is it going to separate the audio and it
Yeah.
will?
Yeah,
Okay.
of course.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Um,
I think that's the first thing to do.
is to get the Zoom interviews onto the Adobe.
Get the Zooms into Adobe, cut the interviews to whatever length it is to tell the entire story from birth to your meeting.
Yeah. So I think what we decided was that we would FaceTime and work through,
Okay.
because we can't. Oh, that was the problem. She can't Zoom and Adobe at the same time.
Right.
So we were going to FaceTime and Adobe at the same time.
Okay. That'll work.
So
At least then you're hearing the audio at the same time.
yeah.
Or you can like have it pointed where you can see,
Yeah.
what she's working on. Because she's going to do the actual cut.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But for your story, I think it's good for you to have, like where you want to come in, what you want to keep, what you want to cut,
Right.
and just do it rough and brutal at the beginning,
Yeah.
But meanwhile, and so also you'll be talking about certain time periods and then get the images that go with those time periods.
Right. I think what you're saying is, what I'm understanding is, let's just get all the rough audio visual and then we can start just plugging in images.
Yeah, just get the rough audio first to tell the story.
Correct.
The
Okay.
actual story in audio, and then put images to it next. And
Okay.
then the third phase is like Brenda, Kelly, Brenda, Kelly, Brenda, Kelly,
Right. Okay.
That just is the simplest way to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
So when are you guys going to work?
Well, when she's feeling better, but I might be able to work with her on Thursday. Any available day that she and I have where we have
Mhm.
like a good 2 hours we can block out,
Yeah.
without distractions, or the time difference kind of fucks us up a little bit, but I have nothing, I'm flexible, so
Okay.
yeah. So she and I'll just get with our calendars and just schedule out this day, this time. It's just like yesterday on I was supposed to, I had to take my mom to the doctor all day, and I was 2 hours away. And so we had a planned meeting to work yesterday at like around the same time, like 4 to 6. And I was still at the doctor's with my mom and still had to drive home for 2 hours. And she's like, you know what? She could barely talk anyway. So she was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, that doesn't mean it's not going to be productive if like you're exhausted and
Right.
distracted. She's sick, Um,
so yeah. So hopefully she's available Thursday, and then, the weekend is just impossible, but maybe, yeah. So she and I'll just try to bust out stuff next week.
yeah, I mean, even if it's rough, it would be good to get the rough story
Okay.
in the next few days and then start to get some pictures put in,
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I've got my assignments.
And so also, if you guys need an extra session to talk about the actual technical part, we can try and jump on a call for like a half hour or something, just so we can get the sound and the picture, the new images with the sound, you know. Because what I would do is, I wish she was on here. What I would do probably is, let me just show you really quickly, and you can maybe tell her. I'm just going to show you on a on a Zoom on a Adobe Premiere timeline. I just want to show you something,
Okay.
and then you can tell her about it, just to make sure you're.
Well, you'll send this recording to her anyway, and she
Oh
can.
yeah, that's
I'll
right.
tell her just to go to the last.
Yeah. Basically, what I would say is don't delete any of your Zoom audio video. Don't just delete it and only work on sound. Keep the Zoom audio and together, sunk up.
Right. Okay.
But the parts that you're going to put pictures in, photos, you just will disenable the Zoom audio, the Zoom video.
Yeah. Right.
And I'll just show you really quickly. Oh no, there's a cat. Okay.
Oh no, there's a cat.
This is Martha. Martha, okay, I know.
Martha.
You're sweet, Martha. Do you see her?
She's
Look at
pretty.
Martha. Look at that face.
Oh, she's so pretty.
I know. She's very squirmy.
She's not the one that jumps from the refrigerator to the cabinet to the walls to the.
She could be.
Didn't you have two? You have two cats, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Is it a brother and a sister?
It's two sisters, Martha and Lois.
Well, I don't know. I remember when I was there, you had one cat that was jumping from the refrigerator to the this to the that. To...
Oh, here's Lois. Hey, Lois, come say hi.
Lois.
Lolo. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so you see how, pretend this is, well, actually, that's not a good thing.
Let me ask you a question. Is there a way for her to send you an Adobe file
Yeah,
and you can put it in your Adobe and mess around with it? I'm not suggesting anytime soon. I'm just saying like
yeah.
you know.
What she can, but I need the original files that she has if she wants to send me a program file, or you can just export a video of what you guys are doing.
Okay.
You know? Okay, so here is, for example, the image. This is just, there's just a little bit of dialogue.
Yes, honey. Okay, here's the froggy.
Okay, so imagine this is your Zoom here. Okay.
Okay.
And all you want is the audio, which is the green.
Okay, here's
Okay.
the froggy.
And so, but you don't want this. You want
Okay.
this to be a still picture, but
Okay.
you need to keep them in sync. Okay.
Mhm.
You go and you disenable it, so it won't show up. It becomes black,
Okay.
Froggy.
but you still hear it, and now that's a still picture.
Okay.
But because then what you can do is you can have a still picture, it's a voiceover, and then you can come back to it, enable just a little part of it, and maybe you want to use the Zoom of you two talking.
Right. Okay.
And so you always are in sync, because sync is always where you don't want to just start cutting things out willy-nilly. You want to
Right.
always be, so always keep the picture and the audio together, but
Gotcha.
just black out the picture that you don't want and put new picture in.
Uh-huh.
Do you see what I mean?
Does the new picture go? Oh, you can't see my pointing. Would the new picture go above it or?
Because it's blacked out, the new picture can go anywhere.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, essentially, yes, it would go above it.
Okay.
But yeah, you
Okay.
just right click and you enable or unenable, disable. You know?
Okay,
But
Yeah.
my main thing I'm just urging is to like always keep the picture there even when you're not using it,
I
just
see.
for sync purposes.
Sure.
So that you might want to pop in for 10 seconds to see an emotional thing of the two of you speaking. And those still pictures could get a little long and a little bit like tired, and you want to see the people talking for 10 seconds. And
Yeah.
maybe it's emotional, maybe you're crying, maybe it's beautiful to see the two of you there, you know, having this conversation. I don't know. But it just gives you more flexibility to just don't disregard the video, even if you're not using it. It's still like nested there.
Okay.
But let me know if you want to pop on like a Zoom next week or something.
Okay.
I'm thinking 2 weeks from now. This sounds like you guys need 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But I'm going to send an email to Kelly and to Supriya and you later, and we'll talk about it.
Okay. Sounds good.
All righty.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I mean, we got something done.
I think it was very productive,
Yeah,
honestly.
I thought also the story is just so complex and amazing. Oh my God.
It
Got
truly
it.
is.
I love it. It's such a great story. And it's
Thank
really your story. Both of your stories, but really your story. You know, I mean, the other film was your story, but your dad's story. This is really you, you know?
Yeah.
And Kelly.
And it's so cool to, it'd be one thing if it was just my story. Okay, that's fine. It's just another adoption story, blah, blah, blah. But it's cool because it's going to be paralleled with hers.
I know.
So different, but yet there's a point in which our lives become paralleled before knowing each other, which
And then
is
intersect. It's like a detective like mystery kind of thing.
yeah. So it's very cool.
All right.
So hopefully she will recover. She's on every medication that they could have thrown at her, so she should be feeling better in a couple days.
Okay, cool.
So,
All right.
and then we'll see what happens with my mom. I'm just going to be on call and like have to go up there. Maybe.
Okay, well, let me know. I mean, we can delay
Yeah.
as much as we need to. Like life is whatever happens in life, we'll figure
Thank
it out.
you. Thanks for being so accommodating.
Of course, and I wish her a recovery and a
Are
speedy
you doing
recovery.
anything special for your birthday? Not special, but fun or
I'm
different.
gonna go to the river with Sonia. I will
Oh.
always want to be on water, so I'm gonna go to the river, and I'm just gonna like picnic. I'm not gonna invite people over. I'm just going to the river. I want to be in the river like in the later afternoon into the evening and
Beautiful.
swim and be
Is it
with.
warm? The
Yeah,
river?
it's like 90 degree. Well, the river's cold, but it's like 90 degrees here, so it's
Right.
warm enough, you know. But it's not freezing cold.
Right.
It's
Well,
bearable.
I guess that's
It's
relative.
it's bearable right now.
Right.
I like it.
I'll send you a little birthday chat on Thursday.
Okay, beautiful.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
have a
you.
great night.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right,
Okay.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, love you. Bye.